Gmar Tov. I have a t-shirt, and every time I wear this t-shirt, I get either, some kind of laugh or a comment. It's an image of a dad. And I don't know why I'm saying a dad. It's really just a guy, and he's smiling and giving the thumbs up. And above his head, it says, "Your secret is safe with me." And underneath his head, it said, "I wasn't even listening." It's funny to think about that, but it's true for almost all of us. A recent study sampled over 2,000 adults during their day-to-day activity and found that 47% of the time, nearly half the time, their minds were not focused on what they were currently doing. Even more striking is when people's minds were wandering, they reported being less happy. Typically, when our mind wanders during the day, it's involved in thinking about actions from the past or planning for the future. But when under stress, this can be amplified. Psychologist Dr. Amishi Jha writes that when we reflect on the past, we end up being in the past, ruminating, reliving, or regretting events that have already happened. Or we fast forward the mind, not just to productively plan, but we end up catastrophizing or worrying about events that haven't happened yet and, frankly, may never happen. As a quote attributed to Mark Twain says, "I lived through some terrible things in my life, some which actually happened." About 2 years ago, 1 year BP, before pandemic, I went to hear Dr. Tara Brach, a psychologist and leader in mindfulness training. There were about 1,000 people in the room, and she asked, "Raise your hand if you ever felt that you weren't worthy." Pretty much every hand in that room went up into the air. And she pointed out that many of us live our lives in a, quote, trance of unworthiness. Years ago, she discovered this in herself, and she writes that it was an, quote, almost invisible tendency to believe that something was wrong with me. Wrong if I was fatigued, wrong if my mind was wandering, wrong if I was anxious, wrong if I was depressed. And the overlay of shame converted unpleasant experiences into a verdict on self. Pain turned into suffering. In the moment that I made myself wrong, the world got small and tight. I was in a trance of unworthiness. That tightness, that place is Meitzar, a kind of narrow feeling that puts you in this small, tight world. This trance encompasses a certain fixed belief about yourself. You become absorbed by your beliefs, and you neither refute them nor attempt to find evidence to the contrary, because in your mind you've already decided you're unworthy. Dr. Shelley Stockwell Nicholas, who studies hypnosis, says that we enter into different kinds of trances all the time. She writes, "In fact, you hypnotize yourself all day long with your self-talk. This state of mind includes automatic thoughts, behaviors, and experiences, and it is in charge of your attitudes and the functioning of your body's actions and reactions." If these automatic thoughts are about how unworthy I am or what a terrible person I am, and those thoughts influence my body's actions and reactions and attitudes, I can imagine it is so difficult to function each day when you feel that way. I believe there are many of us participating in this service right now who suffer from or who in the past have suffered from some kind of trance of unworthiness. There are so many unspoken expectations and definitions of success, and in some families, spoken expectations about who you should be and what you should do with your life. And if we feel like our lives need to be a certain way and we fall short of that expectation, even if it's only in our minds, it's so easy to carry that unworthiness or that feeling of unworthiness deep inside us. This is a spiritual challenge, one that will not be solved in this brief talk. I can only invite us to explore ourselves in new ways, and perhaps a shift in our spiritual objectives might be helpful. Brock explains the renowned psychiatrist Carl Jung's concept of a spiritual path with such beautiful simplicity. Quote, "Rather than climbing up a ladder, seeking perfection, we are unfolding into wholeness." Rather than climbing up a ladder seeking perfection, we are unfolding into wholeness. If we're constantly looking up at some perfection that is frankly impossible to achieve, then we will forever fail to arrive. Like Sisyphus, destined for eternity to roll a huge boulder up a hill, only to have the boulder roll back down to the bottom whenever it neared the top. Unfolding into wholeness, it involves accepting who we are, as we are for now, and unfolding like a flower that opens up its petals to the rays of the sun so that we can notice where we haven't opened up yet. That brings us to today. When you think about it, we spend a full day telling ourselves that we are nothing. We are sheep. We are but dust and ashes, and we've sinned, and we've fallen short, and we've missed the mark. It's like a smorgasbord for the trance of unworthiness. Rabbi Dr. Lawrence Hoffman, one of the foremost Jewish liturgical experts, explains that the 4th century sage Rava began his prayers every day by saying that while he was alive, he was dust, and all the more so when he dies. Thankfully, instead, our tradition went in a different direction. When we awake, we say, Modeh ani lefanecha, I give thanks that I'm alive. On the other hand, the liturgy of the Vidui section, the confessional section, it really isn't about worthiness. Judaism teaches that each and every one of us is worthy, and every person who ever lived was created in God's image. That's what we celebrated on Rosh Hashanah, how incredible it is that our planet exists and we get to live in it. There is the divine spark of light in all of us. And yet at the same time we say, we're only human, we're fallible, and history has shown us that we do make mistakes, and we do miss the mark, and we do commit unworthy or immoral acts. Now, I hope that this is the part of the 47% of this talk when your mind isn't wandering, because what I'm about to say is a key point. Just because we've done something wrong doesn't mean that we are a bad person. Rabbi Hoffman writes that, quote, classical rabbinic thought viewed sin as primal, in the sense that all of us partake in it, but not as the essence of who we are. Here we should distinguish between the act of having sinned and the condition of being a sinner. Similarly, in the Jewish view, sin is something we do, not something that we are. Even though the best of us do sin, We are not total sinners, unquote. Our negative actions, they don't define us. They're blips on the road towards wholeness. They are blemishes in our attempt to discover who we really are. We are not bad, but we may do cruel things to ourselves and others. And that's what today is for. When Tara Brach writes, we are deconditioning the habit of turning against ourselves, of discovering that in this moment's experience, nothing is missing or wrong. She could have been talking about Yom Kippur. Nothing is wrong. In fact, it's absolutely right. Yom Kippur says there's nothing wrong with you. Your condition is that you are human. And so last night, Kol Nidre told us it is already known that we will not keep all of our vows that we make this year. And it's all right. We are forgiven. We are forgiven because those actions don't define who we are. The reading of the list of transgressions actually separates our action, even our words, from the whole of our being. And if we are, as Jung suggests, unfolding into our wholeness, then recognizing our brokenness helps us unfold. The final piece to consider is the style in which we confess on Yom Kippur. We do it together. We do it in unison. We do it in the first person plural, we. We say, we have sinned. We have gone astray. Our tradition is clear on this point. We're all in this together. We all do these things, and we all have the ability to start new every year, every month, every day, with a clean slate. Some would say, by the way, we can begin anew with each breath. Our goal is to learn to embrace life as the broken, messy, and challenging journey that it is, and understand we are not alone. This connectedness to others is an important factor in regaining yourself from this trance of unworthiness. As Brach urges us, quote, we are discovering the truth of our relatedness through belonging to these bodies and these emotions, to each other and to the whole natural world. As we realize our belonging, the trance of unworthiness dissolves. Here, now, this belonging I'm talking about is not about membership at a synagogue. To belong means that you are part of something bigger than just you. The words we have been speaking have been spoken by Jews for nearly 2 millennia. The rituals we have been participating in are happening all over the world, with millions of other Jews devoting their energies towards repentance and renewal. We are all a part of that. We are a part of the 8 billion people in the world. And now we know that something can occur halfway across the planet that can wreak havoc in our backyard. It's true. We are all together. To belong means that no person is more or less worthy than the next. Belonging means that what you carry in your broken heart today, this High Holy Days, this particular year, is understood by all of us as a non-permanent condition. In a moment, we will begin 2 lists of transgressions and wrongdoings. As you hear the words of what we have all done wrong this year, please remember that this list may be what you have done, but it is not who you are. You, and I, we are the same. Human beings who have an identical claim to worthiness as much as the next person. So may we, as we confess, allow ourselves to open up to our blemishes, open up to our mistakes. And may we, as our mind wanders, accept those faults as a part of who we are and allow it to unfold into our wholeness. Gmar Chatima Tova, Tzom Kal. May you be sealed for goodness, and may you have an easy fast.